Well, we finally got our storms back. It's kind of nice to see that for a change. Getting a little bit of rain out there, and there's actually a little bit of weak thunder in the background. I'm not sure if you are going to be able to hear that, but there's a look at the storms. And you can see they definitely look outflow dominant there. So that's what's happening in Texas. Let's take a look at the desktop, and that's what I'm working on right there. This is we're going through a revision of the location identifiers. That's pretty intensive job, and what I'm doing is going through some Russian documents to pull out these identifiers. That's really about the only authoritative source to go to. So we're working with that, and hopefully we'll see a digital atmosphere revision in the next week with a lot of updated identifier tables in that. So what's happening around the country? Well, we do have the storms here, but some places in the Midwest are really getting some action. And there's a look at the radar there at Davenport, showing a classic bow echo. In fact, this is I'm not sure I would call this a derecho. It's not. We haven't had a whole bunch of wind reports out of this. There's been some wind damage being reported from this system, but another name you could call it is a line echo wave pattern, a loop, or LEWP. You can see that S shape there. And one of the most dangerous parts is along the leading edge of that convex shape right there. That's where a lot of the gusts are focused, and back in here you've got the rear inflow jet descending from the mid-levels and helping to push that segment of the storm out. Also, coincidentally, where they have that mark, if you take the center point of that bow echo and go a little bit to the north, that does tend to be a favored area for gust nados, brief spin-ups, and those can be damaging sometimes. So we would watch that area right there, and also right in here where you see these are what we call bookend vortices. You see that shape right there? So typically on the north end, that's where we have the cyclonic part of that, and let's take a look at the velocity and see what it looks like underneath. In fact, let me clear out some of that clutter there. The roads and cities can really cover things up quite a bit. So there we go. Got to keep in mind the radar is located right there, so it's shooting outwards like that, and the cool shades like the greens and purples, those are going to be inbound, so we can see that there's a lot of flow towards the radar up in this area right there. So we're tracing a little bit of maybe a cyclonic area. Let's see how that corresponds to the reflectivity. It's a little bit further north than where I would expect that, but in any case, that's one area to watch. And let's see here. Let me back up that frame just a little bit, see what's going on there. Yeah, it was a very localized area of very tight shear that the algorithm is tracking. Yeah, and it looks like it does kind of come together right there. And let's see. Yeah, the reds are going to be outbounds, the greens are inbounds. It's kind of on the weak side, but there is a circulation right in that area. So that's going to be located about relative to the radar site. Actually, I should measure that from the city. It's going to be about maybe 11 miles to the northwest of the city. So let's zoom out and look at the large picture. There's the SPC risk area showing an enhanced area up in southern Wisconsin and Lake Michigan, and slight risk trailing back along a front. And let's show you where that front is. The green indicating the higher dew points. You can see a little bit of an axis from eastern Arkansas into the Corn Belt of Illinois. And that corresponds to where the some of the greatest severe potential is. And extending down from Wisconsin into Iowa and Kansas, a cold front being driven by this 10-18 millibar high over the Dakotas. So you can see that northerly flow, northwesterly flow coming in to western Iowa and into Nebraska. And then out ahead of it, this is mostly dominated by the Bermuda High. And we don't actually look at the exact centers when we're trying to pick out where the large-scale high is. What I do is I try to find the ridge, and it looks like it's extending right through south of Bermuda into Georgia and into southern Mississippi. So that is the core of the Bermuda High, and the flow is kind of circulating around the edge of that into Texas and Arkansas. So the Gulf is open in Louisiana and East Texas and helping to bring that moisture up into the western Midwest. Let me check chat real quick and make sure everything's looking good there. Don't see any complaints, so I guess our audio is looking good. Hello to Shirley Keast and Erica Baker, Coffeyville, Kansas, 91/75 with 25-knot winds, bringing up that moisture. Funwood Tech is here, and JT, Crystal Lake, Illinois, probably watching those storms there. 75/70 up in that area. Willie Greenway is joining us, and Brian Lowe in the Delmarva area. Ryan Toomeys is checking in from stormy South Florida. Francis Chartrand watching MCS heading through Michigan. Alexi Pinkson Walsh is here with 91 in Texarkana. So let's take a closer look at the Central Plains, and let me get my windows fixed here so I can kind of keep track and make sure everything is displaying the way it's supposed to. Okay, so what I'm going to do on this tighter mesoscale chart is I'm going to bring the plots up, and we'll get an idea of how strong the moisture is. And we can see dew points running from about 70 up to 74. Some areas in East Arkansas up to 76. Pretty good moisture, and that is the moisture axis, and we're even seeing 75 out there around Springfield, Illinois. And then looking at our storm area, it appears there is some sort of boundary running through northern Illinois. We would have to bring up a little bit more data to see what's happening, but looks like it might be a line like that from south of Chicago to south of Davenport and connecting back into those storms to the west. So out ahead of it, this is the moisture feed, 92/75, as we mentioned, and that axis right there probably has some of the best potential. Okay, going to some of the other products. You can take a look at the storm reports, and you can see just kind of a smattering of wind reports through southern Iowa and northern Missouri, and a couple of tornado reports up northwest of Milwaukee. And we can check and see if those were recent. Where's the storm reports? Yeah, bring up the list here. And the two tornado reports were at 2035Z, so that was about 3 or 4 hours ago. Also, this time of year, we're getting almost to the peak of hurricane season, and this is how things look. NHC going for a bullish 30% chance of cyclone formation in the next 5 days. So that's more by quite a bit than what we've seen. There's the Cape Verde Islands, and we're looking for some formation there. This is maybe slightly to the north of any kind of track that'll bring it into the Gulf. Typically, when I see it like that, I'm looking for tracks affecting the East Coast. So we'll see what happens with that. If the Bermuda High is strong, that could push things even further south, but this is just kind of a empirical association with past events that I've seen. Sea surface temperatures looking like this. They are coming up above normal. This was updated yesterday, and in that critical area in the Atlantic, we're seeing about 0.5 degree to 1.5 degrees above normal. So things are shaping up for a little bit of a tropical cyclone season, maybe kind of a small one, but it looks like we're just down to maybe the next couple weeks before we start seeing a system. Okay, let's see. Let's go to the upper levels. There's the 250 millibar chart up at 34,000 feet, showing the jet stream winds. bringing a very strong trough into Montana and Saskatchewan there, and the polar front jet kind of following that trough into the Dakotas and then heading north up into James Bay in Ontario. So that's just barely grazing some of the activity there in Illinois. This chart was for this morning. We don't have the evening chart yet, but I would imagine this jet core has probably shifted a little bit closer to Illinois and Iowa. So we're probably bringing up the bulk shears in that area. We can check the skew-ts and get a more accurate picture of what's going on in that area. And then looking at the moisture supply, this is the 850 millibar chart up at 5,000, and yeah, we do have a low-level jet in place. It's pretty veered there, but showing about 30 to 40 knots. 40 there at Dodge City, and I think I see 35 at Topeka and 45 there in Omaha. So it is coming up. And looking at the actual moisture values, they're running from about 12 to 16. So Fort Worth there has got low 60s dew points up at 850, and that kind of tapers off into the upper 50s in Missouri and Illinois. Then we'll take a quick look at the thickness. Lots of cold air up in the Hudson Bay region. Thickness is below 540 decameters up in that region. And then further south, you can see a gradient. There's a good thickness gradient in that area, indicating a cold front down to the south. And we'll put that kind of like that right there. And that probably connects up into that Quebec system, kind of like that right there. So that's our polar front, has finally moved out of the northwest U.S. and into the north-central U.S. And you can see the baroclinic low located right there in northwest Illinois. Looks like another system possibly heading in from the northwest. See that area right there? There's a gradient kind of feeding through those lows right there. Baroclinic lows located up there in northern British Columbia. So that's probably going to be the next system coming into the northern U.S. and looking at something like that for the position of the fronts. And the source region looks like it is in the Gulf of Alaska. So another cool air mass coming in from the northwest for this week. So let's check out those skew-ts. And I think Davenport should be interesting. These storms are pretty much bearing right down on Davenport. The sounding time, the launch time should be about 23:30. See, usually when the storms are this close to the radiosonde sites, I kind of like to see the relation between the storms and the site. And, of course, looking at the time also. So, going back to the earliest frame, 23:46, that's probably going to be about 15 minutes after the launch. And the launch was somewhere in this area right here. So that is definitely out ahead of the line. I don't think we're looking at any contamination from convection. Maybe the balloon went up between some of these towers here. So, yeah, let's check out that skew-t and see what that looks like. So this is a good proximity sounding for that area. So there is Davenport. And we see a pretty, let me get my cursor fixed here just a second. Every once in a while I'll lose my cursor, and there we go. Have to fix that sometimes. Anyway, steep lapse rate from just above the surface all the way up to about 10,000 feet. So that's definitely going to help the instability in that column there. And we see what looks like maybe upper 60s dew points mixed around Davenport. So low-level moisture profile is going to look something like that. And then lifting that with, say, 84 degrees. We're going to come up with something like that right there. So a little bit of capping right in that area. And then the rest all the way up is Cape. So that's probably going to be about 1,500 to 2,000 Cape in that area right there. And you can see dry air aloft up above 18,000 feet. And when we see dry air aloft like that, where the moisture is separated from the temperature by a wide amount like that, that's favorable for D-Cape or downdraft Cape. In other words, that can help entrain dry air into the downdraft and help that downdraft accelerate. And that increases the occurrence of outflow winds. We see a lot more outflow dominance when that happens, and if we have very unstable conditions, we can end up with some severe structures out of something like that. So let's take a look around the country. Pacific Northwest still showing some smoke up there in Washington, but overall it's pretty clear. We had a couple days ago, we had that strong cold air advection coming in through Idaho, and it looks like that's been replaced by high pressure. For the southwestern U.S., looks like the monsoon has died down a little bit. We're only seeing the monsoon in northern Mexico, south of El Paso and Douglas there. So a bit of a change in that region. Of course, up in the north-central U.S., we've got that storm system moving through Iowa. And let's run an animation. And this shows things earlier today. So you can see the storms coming together right there around Des Moines. And towards the end, the anvils really get quite a bit larger as they head into eastern Iowa there. So there's one more. And looks like the tail end storms in northern Missouri up there near Bethany all the way down to the Whiteman Air Force Base area. For Texas, let's roll that one. Sea breeze definitely active. You can see it coming together right there north of Houston into the Lake Charles area. And very widespread storms, and that's what we're seeing on the opening clips. Some of those CBs showing there. So anyway, those are going to affect mostly East Texas. These tend to be very diurnal, so those should die out pretty quickly. And it does look like up in the panhandles, one little storm got going just east of Amarillo. Not putting out very much of an anvil, so I'm not really expecting much severe weather out of that, but maybe there's a few chasers out there getting some good photo structure. All right, for the northeast U.S., they're going to be out pretty far ahead of that incoming frontal system. So we're just seeing westerly flow in that area, fair weather, and most of the storms are focused on the mountains of Virginia there. And then going into the southeast U.S., pretty active pattern there in Florida. A couple waves coming inland from the Atlantic, crossing Florida there, generating some storms. And also the sea breeze active, of course, in the western Gulf region. Looks like multiple boundaries for that area. Yeah, there's a good boundary right there. That's the sea breeze right there in the Florida Panhandle. And it looks like it's been West Florida that's been getting most of the activity today. We can zoom in on that Midwest activity and see what things look like. You can see that very large shadow coming from those storms. And there's been a couple papers published. One by what was, I'm trying to remember the name. I can't recall. It's one of the OU researchers there. He was looking at cloud shadows like you see right here. And the hypothesis there was maybe that forms a thermal gradient that can be ingested into the storm. And that can help presumably increase tornadogenesis probability. So that's something to watch for. On a situation like this, not much help. The sun angles are a little bit different, but during the spring, if you get a nice long cloud shadow, the storm is out to the west. That's something to pay attention to. That could definitely change the character, and that could explain why some supercells develop tornadoes and some don't. Pretty good overshoot there north of Davenport, and you can see the tail end storms out there in Missouri. It does look like there was a boundary earlier in Illinois. So we rolled this back to about 4 p.m. and there's one right there. That could be an old outflow boundary. And it looks like that lifted north very slowly. And even though we kind of lose definition, you can turn to the radars to kind of pin down exactly where that might be. There can be local enhancement along those kinds of boundaries. Let's see if that boundary shows up on the Davenport radar. I think we're looking for it kind of in this area. Yeah, and it's kind of indeterminate. So what we can do is look at spectrum width. Don't see anything there. Definitely see the outflow racing out ahead of that storm. And we can also check velocity, and it's not really showing up very well, but we know it's kind of in that area right there. Do have a tornado warning that came out on this system just in the last few minutes, and that's up on the northern part of that bow right there. We'll check in on the velocity there. We'll try to find out what triggered it. And you can see a lot of range folding in this area, so that's going to be a problem. And when you see that range folding kind of messing things up, what you can do is go up to a higher tilt and see if that resolves itself. And it appears not much help there. If we go up to 1.3, yeah, we do kind of shake off some of that range folding. And let's see, let me try 1.8. Yeah, it's not a very optimal situation here. So I think probably what we were seeing was something right in this area. You can see the outbounds right there. Red is, of course, is the outbounds, and we're seeing about maybe 40 knots going out right in that area, and then we've got about 10 coming in there. That's about 50 knots a shear, and then the next frame looks like that. Yeah, that's range folded there. So it's hard to tell from this one radar. And let me just check on the product real quick. Tornado warning is canceled. Radar confirmed tornado. I don't like that phrasing there. Radar confirmed. Confirmed means, you know, it has been verified. I would probably go with radar indicated tornado for something like that. But anyway, that's kind of splitting hairs. So anyway, the system is pushing into Illinois there. And it's probably got a window of maybe about 3 or 4 hours before things start going on the decline. Okay, so let's go ahead and head into the forecast. For Texas, we're just going to see things kind of gradually die down this evening. Most of the activity that we have here is along that sea breeze. And those should be pretty much shut down by about the next 2 or 3 hours. And then we'll just kind of return to that southerly flow going into tomorrow. Up to the north, though, looks like a front moving into northwest Oklahoma. That could cause a few cells to develop late tonight. Let's see what happens. Yeah, right in this area. There's a pretty good forcing with that front and with the southerly winds bringing up moisture. That's, of course, is a favored area, and the model going for the area north of I-40 and east or west of I-35 for some scattered cells tonight. Those shouldn't really be severe. Okay, we'll look at the upper levels and see what's coming for the next couple days. There's that strong shortwave moving through the Dakotas. It'll be moving into Minnesota tonight. And that should be in Kansas by tomorrow, or Canada by tomorrow. So that's going to be mostly an issue for Ontario there. Looks like most of those dynamics should be north of the Midwest. Jet stream is located about like that right there. However, if we end up with the front kind of stalling out through the Midwest, we could see more storms go up tomorrow, but maybe a little bit less organized. Ridging will be moving in tomorrow night into the northern plains. Another trough moving in from the west, but that appears to be heading up into the Canadian prairies. And then, of course, the subtropical high. Let's see what's going on with that. Subtropical high positioned over Virginia. Looks like a very weak ridge into Texas, and the absence of a strong high across Texas is what has helped that sea breeze get going. So once that high returns, we'll probably see things start to die off once again. And that appears to start around Thursday into Friday. There's that high developing there in New Mexico. And yeah, I do see we dropped frames earlier. 7,000 dropped frames, that's not good. I think we probably had something eating up our bandwidth. Okay, so let's see. Let's head into the long term. Front will be stalling out in the Midwest. Looks like it kind of squeaks southward into the Ohio River region. And there's the incoming high. So it looks like probably more storms tomorrow in the Louisville and Paducah area. They should be weaker than what we saw today. And then you can kind of see the tail end of the front kind of set up like that right there. This is that old front just kind of parking itself and then returning north in the Great Plains as a warm front. So that'll be probably a focus for activity there in Kansas and Nebraska for Thursday and Friday. A couple of MCSs indicated for Friday night there. We're actually on Friday. And then we got our next system coming in from the north. There's actually a high up in this region. It's probably hard to see. The front itself located something like that. So that'll be moving into Kansas and northern Oklahoma there. Chances of rain going up this weekend for that area. And let's see, the next big change coming in from the north. Stronger reinforcement of cold air. This is for Monday. So that parks a front down over Kansas and Missouri once again. So it looks like more precip for Monday and Tuesday in that area. And here comes another push coming in from British Columbia for Tuesday and Wednesday. So this is a reinforcing shot of cold air. Doesn't get very far. Looks like the front ends up like that for next Thursday. And towards the very end, the model was developing some insanely high pressure in this region, driving a very, very strong front. Let's see if it backed off on that. No, it's kind of still going with that scenario. 1030 millibar high, pretty strong there. And there it is. That would be some very strong cold air if this was December. But I would expect this to undergo quite a bit of modification. In fact, looks like the bulk of it stays up in Canada, so that's not That's not very cool. We need some of that cold air down here. So yeah, most of that is going to be heading into the Great Lakes area, and it just looks like more stagnant weather for the southern U.S. We are getting into the easterly flow situation. So the tropics are going to be active, bringing waves across Florida into Louisiana and Texas. So that'll probably dominate the weather in that area for the next week or two. And of course, we'll have to watch that Cape Verde system to see if that comes together. That could give us a little bit of tropical storm action. Okay, let me take one look at chat. David Lumbert, 89 over 74 there in Maumelle, Arkansas. Ryan Toomey's watching the Atlantic there. Sue M is here looking for a stormy day in her area. Some great CGs and torrential rain from Shirley Keaston, the UP of Michigan. And yeah, there's that buffering around 723, 724. Buff NATO, okay. Trent Tubazuski, great weather in southeast Wisconsin, woke up last night and found his deck chairs, went for a stroll down the street. Yeah, I can only wonder what it's like to have a strong breeze from a storm. It's been months and months since we've had that here. And that should do it for tonight. Anyway, I appreciate y'all joining. And what is today? Tuesday? Lost track of the days here. Yeah, we'll be back Thursday for another edition of Meteorology Lab. So take care, and we will see you then. Bye-bye.